You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Calling all new school counselors. If you're an intern, just graduated, or recently hired, this is for you. I have a brand new free training series for you called New School Counselor Bootcamp. And this 5-part training will be covering how to make the most of your internship, rocking the interview process, how to prepare your office, setting up for a successful and stress-free school year, and your first 30, 60, and 90-day to-do list. Summer is the perfect time to get started, so go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/bootcamp to sign up. Hey listeners, let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have to stress about planning your class lessons, small groups, and individual sessions anymore. My school counseling membership program, Impact, is here to help. So, what do Impact members get? Monthly curriculum plans across all 3 tiers, SEL lessons, small groups, individual, and seasonal activities, step-by-step video implementation guides, bi-weekly Zoom coaching calls with me, and an exclusive Facebook group community. This membership is designed for school counselors who want to deliver the best possible content to their students, but who also want to just press the easy button. You'll get access to monthly curriculum plans, resources, support, and community so you can deliver quality, engaging, life-changing counseling lessons to your kiddos. So what do you think? Are you ready to make an impact? Join today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So before we get started today, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. I've been getting a lot of DMs on Instagram and a few emails of people just telling me that they're enjoying the podcast and they're finding it helpful. So I super love hearing that. If you could please leave us a review over on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're on Spotify, all over. If you could leave a review, that would be so helpful because this is a way that other counselors can find it. So you know how it seems like the internet knows everything about you. So it may know that you're a counselor and then it will recommend counseling type podcasts to you. And we just want to get this information out to as many counselors as possible. Or if you know a counselor in real life who you think would benefit from it, if you could just spread the word, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. So this month on the podcast, we're going to be focusing on strategies that will help you reach more students and advocate for your role. Now, the best part about these strategies I'll be covering over the next 4 weeks is that they're not additional things that you need to do, because you may be thinking, my plate is so full already. Like, I like listening to the podcast and learning new things, but sometimes I feel overwhelmed at the thought of implementing one more new thing. And that's really what I'm trying to prevent with this podcast. That's why I keep the episodes short, and it's called School Counseling Simplified. I try to keep it really simple and as a way for you to do small changes that make big differences. So for May, these strategies that you can reach more students and advocate for your role, the good news is they're likely things you've already been doing. So you're probably already doing some of these things. You just need to realize and communicate how it can help you reach more students and advocate for your role. So anyways, I'm super pumped about this month's content. For this first week, we're going to talk about how you can batch communication to reach more students and advocate for your role. So let's talk about the word batching. So it's kind of a big word. I hear it a lot in like the entrepreneurial space as far as like batching tasks or batching work. For example, sometimes I'll batch my podcast. I may sit down and record all of my May podcast at one time because they're all on a similar topic. So that's something I've seen people do in their work life. And I was like, how can we bring this to school counseling and how can this be helpful? So one area I found that it would be super helpful in is in terms of communication. So batching is when you're doing those multiple tasks at once, and this helps you save time because any time that we switch tasks, it takes a few minutes for our brain to kind of refocus. And that's if we don't get distracted on something else in between. So for example, maybe you're washing the dishes and then you get a text and you're like, oh, I need to reply to that text. So you stop washing the dishes, you go over and reply to the text, then you come back to the dishes. You might have forgot which dish you were scrubbing, something like that. Or that's if you don't get distracted. Likely what happens is you go to reply to the text and then you see a notification for something else and you head over there, and then you're 20 minutes on your phone and a sink full of dirty dishes. Am I right? So that definitely happens to us, right? It can be super hard to stay focused, especially if we're switching between a bunch of tasks. So, multitasking kind of has a bad rap. It seems like you're being productive and efficient, but usually it means you're doing a lot of things not at 100%, where it's better to do one thing, focus on one thing at a time, and really give it your full attention and focus. So back to the example, if you were washing your dishes and you're focusing on them and you're just doing a great job on that, and then afterwards you can sit on the couch and respond to all of your text messages and notifications in one spot instead of trying to juggle back and forth. And you'll probably spend less time doing both tasks. So this makes me think of it because our dishwasher needs to be repaired. So I may be doing a lot of hand washing here in the future. So this got me thinking, how can we batch as school counselors, and how can we use batching to make our work life easier? And the area that I decided batching would be helpful is in terms of communication. So what I mean by communication is email, phone calls, possibly even meetings. So these are must-dos that you have to do, but they don't have to dominate your schedule and leave you feeling like your brain has too many tabs open. I'm sure you've seen that little graphic going around the internet, and I can totally relate, and my computer can totally relate. What kind of person are you? Do you have 20 tabs open all the time like me, or are you pretty good about having one or two? Anyways, well, you have to do email, you have to do phone calls to parents sometimes, and you have to do meetings. Now, these aren't always our favorite parts of our job. You're likely in counseling to help students and to provide those direct services with kiddos, but these are things that need to get done. That being said, they don't have to take over your whole schedule, which we oftentimes feel like they do. So think about your email. Do you keep your email open all day? So I know I have been guilty of this in the past. I'll open up my computer when I get to work. I open the email, start checking some emails. Life happens, the day happens. I start seeing kids, but I always have that email tab open. It's always the first tab there. My inbox is just sitting there. Now, keeping it open allows you to easily get distracted and waste time by unimportant things in your inbox. So, for example, let's say that you have your inbox open, but then you're getting things that aren't even important, like maybe a coupon for your favorite store, or you see like some news article in there, something like that. Not that that's unimportant, but you know what I mean, distracting things that aren't what you're supposed to be focusing on. So these things you see in your inbox, and the next thing you know, you're 3 pages into a news article that you weren't even planning on reading. And when you're supposed to be working, right? Well, this is taking time away that you could be providing direct services to students. And I know that's what you want to do, but it's just human nature to get distracted. So one way we can eliminate this is by not keeping our email open all day. It sounds simple, but I challenge you to try it this week. It's actually kind of difficult. And you may be thinking, well, I only have my work email open, so I'm not getting my favorite stores, sales, or friends' emails, or maybe a recipe. I know I follow a lot of like food bloggers, and I'll get a recipe link, and then I'll end up on like 30 ways to cook a vegan hot dog, or whatever, something funny like that. And then I start reading them all. Because that's what, online marketers know how to do, right? They know how to hook you in, and next thing you know, you're reading a whole article. But basically, even if it's your work email, you could still get distracted, because I know I was on so many different lists. So for example, I would get lists just or emails from my students' parents or my students' teachers directly related to those students. I may be emailing back and forth with colleagues and getting those responses, but you're likely on like a district list. So perhaps every time the district sends out an email to everybody, you're getting those. Then maybe your school site, you're on that list, so you're getting those. And then maybe your department, you're on that list. So you end up getting a lot of different emails from different lists, like maybe like a specialist list, elementary email, the committee email, district-wide email, all of these different emails. And those might not be as important as the one or two that you have your inbox open for. So this is a problem, right? Like I said, I'm guilty. I feel like many of you are likely doing the same thing. So how can we solve this? Well, we can batch respond to our emails. So what this looks like is you can set a time block on your calendar to answer email. So start with about 15 minutes. And you may be thinking, that doesn't seem like a lot of time. But you might be surprised if you're focused on one thing, how much you can accomplish in 15 minutes. So you may be answering and waiting for a reply for someone, but you don't want to keep it open all day. So instead, you're going to get out your calendar. So whether you're using a Google Calendar, digital calendar, that's what I recommend. But even if you're using a paper calendar, go ahead and write in there email and make a 15-minute block, and that's going to be your designated email window. Now, I recommend you do this at the start of the day. So sit down with your bagel and your coffee and get to work batching your email. So you're going to open up your computer, you got your coffee, and for 15 minutes, all you're going to do is email. And maybe it doesn't take that long. That's awesome. But by the time you read your emails, you're going to respond to some. Maybe you have to save some, mark as unread because you have a follow-up question, something like that. But you're going to get through your inbox, clear it out, and that's going to make you feel so ready to tackle your day. Now, perhaps you're replying to some emails and you want to wait on a response. Maybe you said, you're talking to a parent about some student concerns and you're waiting to hear what they have to say. Well, instead of just waiting for that ding, that notification to come in that they emailed you back, you're going to close your email. And then you're going to do your other counseling tasks. And then later in the day, during your next designated email window, you'll reopen it, same thing, only focusing on email, and that's when you can check to see if they replied. So I recommend you do this in the morning, and then a second time to close out your work day, so in the afternoon. So maybe like 8 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then you maybe can at lunch if you must. I don't recommend it because that's your time. Well, you likely are doing a lunch bunch or something too, but if not, it's your time to eat your lunch and chill, and you deserve that time. So you don't want to be, checking email the whole time, but if you feel like you need a third time, that's fine. And maybe you are, weaning yourself off of your email habits. So perhaps you start checking it 3 times a work day, and then you go down to 2. Now notice I said a work day. So do not check your work email in the evenings or on the weekends. I repeat, do not check your work email in the evenings or on the weekends. This is part of advocating for your role, your time with your family and your friends or your hobbies or whatever you like to do in your free time. That is your time, and you don't want your work to dominate your personal time, because self-care means that we are taking care of ourselves and we are separating our work from our personal life. And that's a really important boundary that you want to make. So again, this is super simple. You're just going to get out your calendar, write those 15-minute blocks for email, and that is your designated email time. That means that you do not multitask during this time. You don't, if someone walks in, you say like, I'll be with you in a second. This is your time to do email. And I promise you this is going to pay off in the end, and you're going to find that you have all this extra time in your schedule that you were spending in your inbox. Now, a big part of helping with the distraction of email is to eliminate notifications. Now, you may have your email on your phone, and you may like to keep it on your phone. This is kind of a debated thing, and it's personal preference. I sometimes like it on the phone just for the ease of convenience. If I'm on campus walking around not at my computer, I can still reference an email. But that being said, you do want, like I mentioned before, to be aware of how often you're checking your work email outside of your work hours. So I encourage you can keep it on your phone if you need to, but try to only check it during those designated times, okay? So having an email notification on your phone is like a slot machine. It's addicting, and it's not a good habit. So step 1 is to make those time blocks in your schedule. Step 2, get rid of those notifications. Now, let's talk about how you can set clear communication guidelines and boundaries with email. So, like I said, perhaps you're waiting for a response from someone, and they're likely going to respond. Let's say they respond at noon, but your next designated email time is until 3 p.m. You may be, stressed out thinking that 3 hours are going by without you replying to someone, and they're going to think you're the worst counselor ever. Well, that's just simply not the case. But we need to set a boundary of when we check our emails with colleagues and parents. And by doing this, we can communicate clearly the expectation. That way, no one's feeling disappointed or feeling like we are inadequate. So you can tell the parents that you work with and your colleagues Say, I answer emails between X, Y, and Z times, or you can expect to hear with me within X amount of hours. Now, there's a few ways you can communicate this. So it may be kind of awkward to say that in person. You may feel kind of rude. You shouldn't, but you may, but that's okay. But you can mention it on your counseling website. So have an area there, like with your contact information, and then you can say the hours that they can expect to hear with you. Like, I'll return to all emails within 4 hours during the workday, or you can expect to hear from me within these set times. You could also include this on a permission slip. So whenever I, give a parent a permission slip to let them know that I'll be working with their student, I always have on there my contact info. Throw that information there as well. Another place you could include this that is really helpful is on your email signature. So you can personalize your email signature, so you can show the hours that you are on campus and available. Now, this is a complete game changer if you're at multiple sites or if you were part-time. So this happened to me in 2 ways. I used to work at 2 schools, and I did not specify on my email signature which school I was at when. So people would, contact me regarding one school, and then they would think I was, not, being responsive or being kind of flaky. But once I clearly added that on my email signature, they could say, oh, she's at the other side on Tuesdays. I bet she'll get back to me with this within 24 hours or something like that. That's really helpful for parents as well, because they may not even know that you are split between school sites. This again benefited me when I worked at the international school here in Costa Rica. I was only part-time. I had left at 2 instead of 3, and I didn't work Fridays. It was a pretty sweet schedule. But anyways, I was only part-time, so therefore I like to indicate the hours I was on campus. So if someone emailed me at 2:30 in the afternoon, well, I'm not going to reply to them until 8 a.m. the following day. Now, they may be thinking, my kid's still in school till 3. Why isn't she replying? But I'm part-time, and I don't answer my emails at home in the evenings, so they know that I'm not going to get back to them until the following morning. The thing is, they're not going to care. People don't necessarily care the amount of time you're going to let go in between the email response, but what they do care about is being communicated with clearly. So clear communication prevents people from thinking that you are unresponsive or flaky. So you want to be clear about when you are available, and then you do want to be very responsive when you're in your designated email time. You want to be efficient and responsive. But by communicating this clearly, you're setting a boundary. So you can really get into a negative expectation trap here if you start to answer your emails on nights and weekends, because your behavior and your response time is training the person you're communicating with that's how you act, and that's what an expectation is. So for example, I worked at an educational consulting company before working at a school as a school counselor, and it was like 10 p.m. on a weeknight. I remember laying in bed. I was like reading. My husband and I were laying in bed about to go to bed, and I had my phone, and I probably had a notification, I don't recall, but I had an email from a mom. I was working with her daughter, and it was a nasty email, and she was just very upset about something, very angry. And I was all upset about it. I read it. I didn't reply then because it was so late, but I did read it then. And then it was all in my head. I think I was crying like right before bed. I'm all stressed the next morning. And then it was resolved, at 8:30 or whatever once I got to work. But had I just waited until I was in my, fresh space, ready to respond to emails with my coffee and everything, then I could have replied from a much better place. And then, without all the dramatics, I ruined my whole evening for nothing. The counterpart to that is sometimes I would respond. I would, send out emails at 7 p.m. or on Saturday morning. So by me showing that this is okay and showing that, I do this, then other people, I'm kind of training the people I'm communicate with to do the same. So then they're going to start expecting responses on weekends and responses in the evenings, or they're going to start contacting me within those times. But if you're consistent about your response time during your designated work windows and during your designated batching times, you're setting a clear expectation that this is when you'll be replying to email. I think you're going to be super surprised. This seems kind of simple to answer all your email at once, and you may be thinking, well, you don't know my situation. It's better for me to be available throughout the day. But I encourage you, just try it out for a week. just to only answer your email during these set times. And I think you're going to be surprised at the amount of time that frees up. It suddenly frees up, and you can see the amount of time you have available to do those things you love, like prepare a class lesson, work with students, lead a small group, something like that. If you want to do an extra fun bonus homework assignment, then I encourage you to do a time audit. And that's where you spend 1 week tracking your time and just jot down how often you're on your email. And then that'll really show you. Perhaps you see throughout the day that you check your email 7 different times for 5 minutes. And you're thinking, wow, that's the 5 minutes in my email, but then also the couple minutes it takes me to get back to the task I was working on. So experiment number 1 is just try this out for a week, see if it works for you. And then number 2, if you want to be extra, I encourage you to try that time audit. So remember, you don't want to check those emails during weekends and evenings. You can practice self-care by drawing a hard line when it comes to your time. This sounds harsh, but it's efficient, and then that expectation will become the reality. Now, that's regarding email. I had a lot to say about email because that is where we do most of our communication, but I do want to touch on phone calls for a minute. So like email, you can batch your phone calls, and this will save your schedule and your sanity. So phone calls, you may be getting them throughout the day, and then you're calling back. And I've been on the phone with a parent before, and of course to them, they have one child perhaps that you're seeing, and it's very important to them. They think their child is the most important. They are the most important to them, right? My son's the most important to me. So they think their child's the most important, so they're going to talk to you for an hour about all their concerns. Well, unlike them, you might have 700 kids on your, at your school site. You might have 50 kids who you see individually or through small groups. And those are the kids that, you're equally responsible for all of their SEL and all of their well-being. So to the parent, theirs is the most important. But on the flip side, you have, a bunch of kids who are the most important to someone. So you don't want to be rude to the parent, but you also need to make sure that you're serving these other students as well. So creating a boundary within phone calls allows you to do this, because it's been the case where I've been on the phone with a parent and, they're just very concerned talking about something at length. Meanwhile, I'm having to tell my small group kids, come back in 5 minutes or whatever, and it puts you in an awkward situation, and it's not a good use of your time. So you can set clear boundaries with parents to let them know when you are available. Now, again, earlier we mentioned the email signature, permission slips, and the website as places to include this information. But you can also set it up in your voicemail to say when you're returning calls. So you can, have your phone go to a voicemail system during certain hours and then say, I'll be returning calls between 1 and 2 p.m. every day. You can also set up kind of a triage system to specify if it's urgent. So, a lot of times you'll call the doctor and they're closed, and they'll say, if this is an emergency, please call 911. So obviously if someone's having a mental health emergency, you do want them to call 911, but you could have a triage system like, if this is in regards to XYZ, contact the front office. But if this is in regards to this, then leave a message here and I'll be getting back to you within 4 hours or between 1 and 2 p.m. Try not to say, I want you to avoid this phrase, I'm flexible, when's best for you, when someone wants a phone meeting. I literally did this yesterday, so I am still guilty of this for sure. And it's part of assuming most of you listening are women, I know we have a lot of women in our profession. As a woman and as a people pleaser, it is really easy for us to want to say it's easy for me, I can work around your schedule, you just let me know. But that's not the best when someone wants a phone meeting. You want to avoid this back and forth communication yo-yo. Same thing that happens with email. Let me know when's good for you. Okay. And then, I can do this time. What can you do? I can do this time. And I call it a yo-yo because it's just back and forth. It's time consuming and inefficient. So what you can do instead is have a set schedule. So again, look at your daily calendar, decide the time that you're going to be returning calls, and then you're blocking it off on your schedule. So this will be the time that you're going to batch phone calls. So don't schedule any class lessons, small groups, or individual sessions during this time. This is going to be your phone call time. Now, some people may spend more time on the phone than others. So depending on your situation, you can group this with your email time, or you can keep it separate, depending on how many phone calls you get. Now you may think, well, some days I get a lot of calls, but then there might be 3 days where I don't have any calls. Wouldn't that be a waste of time? Absolutely not. You're going to have this set time on your schedule. This applies to email as well. You have the set time on your schedule. And if that day, if you allotted 15 minutes, but you only need 5 minutes, or maybe you don't need any time during your time block, guess what? You have a free 5 minutes or free 15 minutes to spend on anything else. And if you're like me, or like most counselors I know, you have an ongoing to-do list of little tasks that seemingly never get crossed off. So during that time, think of it as a free little treat time that you can catch up on something, or maybe you just want to go on a little walk to reset, take a mindful moment, just close your office door for a second. Whatever you need, you're kind of having a freebie time if you don't have a phone call or email that needs to be attended to during your designated time. And again, this can apply with meetings. So that is our third form of communication, is perhaps you have meetings with parents. Now, you're not in control of all of the meetings you attend. You may get asked to attend a lot of meetings, and I understand that many of these are scheduled by, like for example, if you're attending an IEP meeting, perhaps it's scheduled by the case manager, or perhaps your admin is scheduling faculty meetings. You can't control all of these, obviously. But the meetings that you can control, try to batch them as well. So perhaps you have one day a week where you like to meet with parents and you suggest that day and you knock out all your parent meetings once a week. Or perhaps it's every day but between designated hours, something like that. And again, you want to communicate your availability for this clearly. This too helps avoid that email or phone call yo-yo of like, when can you meet? I don't know, when can you meet? Well, we're flexible. Oh, I'm flexible too. Waste of time that you could be, providing direct services to kiddos. So instead say, oh, I'm available for meetings with them these times. You can sign up for one here. Something like that. Okay, so let's talk about the goal. I gave you some productivity strategies here on how to batch communicate email, phone calls, and meetings. But why are we doing this? Well, remember, our goal for this month is to reach more students and advocate for our position. So how does this help you reach more students? Well, you'll literally have more time in your schedule. So we all have the same 24 hours in a day, or we all have the same 8-hour work day, or however long you're on campus. But it seems like you have more time when you start to batch things. So by batching things, you'll free up space in your schedule. And what can you do with that space? Reach more students. You'll literally have more time in your schedule to see kids. You can do more class lessons or do more small groups, or maybe instead of spending 15 minutes with an individual, you'll have time to spend 20 minutes with an individual student each week. You can literally reach more students and change more lives by following these productivity tips of batching. Now, what about in regards to advocating for your position? Well, by setting these boundaries, you're showing others that you respect your time is valuable, and that they should respect your time too. Oftentimes people don't know the role of the school counselor, and they may be confused on what we do and what value we're adding to the school. So how we can advocate for ourselves is by communicating, actually, I can't meet you at noon on Thursday because that's when I teach a class lesson. And this class lesson is very important because it's a tier 1 intervention that is going to help our students learn about bullying prevention. So by, if you're very flexible and you're like, oh yeah, I can move stuff around, no worries, let's do that, you're showing that your work is not as important. Because think about it, would a teacher move like a math lesson to meet with a parent? Probably not. And the parent would understand, oh, that's academic time, that's instruction time, we can't do it then. But sometimes they may think your services are more loosey-goosey or not as important. So in order to advocate for our role, it's important that we really indicate and communicate the value of our time. And we can communicate that with our schedule and by setting boundaries. Awesome. I felt like I kind of gave you some tough love today, but I hope you received it well, and I hope you are excited about these new strategies. So remember, our end goal here is so positive. We want to help more students and advocate for our role and our profession as a whole, and we can do that through batch communicating in those 3 ways: email, phone call, and meetings. I hope you found this helpful. If you want a freebie to help you go along with this, I have created something for you. It is a stress-free scheduling toolkit. So I have a stress-free scheduling toolkit for you. It includes some tips on batching and some other scheduling hacks I think you will love. So go ahead and download it. We will put a link in the show notes. If you're not sure where to find it, just send me a message and I'll get it over to you. Okay, talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.